I want to thank everyone for being here with us for annual conference. If you don't know me, my name is Ron Hendrick. I was until a week ago today the Senior Associate Dean for the college, and as of a week ago tomorrow became Acting Dean for the college and Vice President for Agricultural Administration. So a lot of folks have given me congratulations. I appreciate that. Asked me how I feel about it. I feel pretty good. I just hope it works out for the rest of you. So. What an exciting time to be at Ohio State University, the College of Food, Agriculture, Environmental Sciences, and an OSU extension. The university is embarking on and investing things of importance to us, all of the discovery themes, sustainability, access, affordability, things that are all priorities for us. The college is involved in those and investing in those and many other things, people and programs. And Extension is embedded within all of them and engaged across the full breadth of all the exciting things that we're doing here at the university. It is a privilege for me to be able to serve in this acting role and to have Extension as part of my portfolio. My history with Extension goes back to age 10 when I started the first of what were several years in 4-H, and I've had the privilege of working in various roles as a graduate student and faculty member and now as an administrator. So the next couple days will be exciting. We'll be talking about a lot of things. You'll meet a lot of new and interesting people. Within Extension, we've had a lot of changes. Dr. Keith Smith retired this past year after about a quarter century of leadership for OSU Extension. At the beginning of next month, Dr. Roger Rennekamp will join us, and Roger's here with us today. Very pleased to have Roger coming here from Oregon State University, coming back to the Ohio State University, to this college, and to Extension. I can't tell you also from a college leadership perspective just how great and reassuring it's been to have Greg Davis in his interim role. And you'll hear more from Greg tomorrow and have a chance to interact with him, but I did want to take just a minute to give Greg a hand and thank him for not just keeping Extension going, but keeping us moving forward over these last several months. So the reason I'm up here is because Bruce McPheron is not. He's busy provosting and has joined us today, and I'll give him a brief but formal introduction in just a moment. I've had a number of people ask me, what does that mean for the college? Are we going to put the brakes on things? The answer is no. With the dean in the provost office, does this mean we get extra special treatment? He may disagree, but the answer is no. What I've told people is what this means is that we get to do what we've always done, which is move forward under our own energy and our own ideas, and vision and implement and plan and act upon the things that are important to us. We have spent a good deal of time with the conversation of the future of Extension, the vice president's conversation, this vice president's conversation, a priority to this acting vice president and dean as well. And so this next year, we'll continue our conversation on the future of Extension, continue talking, but also planning and also implementing. And it's not going to be possible without the effort of all of you, as well as the new and existing leadership with Extension. So my thanks to all of you. Congratulations to new leadership. And my endorsement for all the hard work we have ahead of us. I will now turn the podium over to Dr. Bruce McPheron. Bruce was dean of this college for just a shade over 3 years before he was asked by President Drake to serve as executive vice president for the university and provost here. Bruce's arrival in that office was anticipated by many as a distinct possibility. He's been welcomed by all that I've heard. The college is lucky to have him in that office and in those roles, but the university is particularly lucky to have him in those roles. So thank you, Bruce, and welcome.
Well, I must say this is unexpected, to be introduced by the dean of the college. But you heard it from Ron. We're in a transitional period here, and I think it's just really important to reinforce a couple of things that Ron shared with you. And one is that, even though I am not doing the day-to-day leadership of the college, there's not a day that I don't wake up thinking about the success of the college and the leadership role that it has on the university's larger portfolio. And I really celebrate what Ron and Terry Niblack and all of our leaders have committed to doing, and that is not missing a beat. You congratulated Greg Davis very justifiably. Greg's challenge was to come in and not stumble on any barrier, but rather to leap over them, and he did it with great grace. I think the leadership that he has provided as we've gone through the extension leadership transition period is really a hallmark of what I see as the heart and soul of this organization of OSU Extension, and that is the willingness to keep our eyes on the ultimate prize. And I'll come back to that because I want to reflect a little bit this morning on the Vice President's conversation and exactly what that means and where it's headed in a tee-up to having Graham and Becky talk a little bit more about that. But just a couple broader observations before we get to that. I have been in my new role for 5 working days. I changed into dry clothing before I came over because if you've ever doubted the metaphor of fire hose, let me tell you, it's pretty cold this time of year. And the water is full force. But there's a great advantage to having led a college like ours, and that advantage is the terrific diversity of disciplines that makes up our college, and I would say even more importantly, our focus, our commitment to the fact that our scholarship does not stop within our academic disciplines. Our scholarship speaks to the world. And you speak to the world through speaking to the communities in which you're found. And we cannot downplay the importance of that for the university. One of my first roles in this interim assignment is in fact to try to bring the search to a close for our vice provost for outreach and engagement. And so you can imagine that this is a topic that I am keenly interested in, because that individual is going to have to provide leadership that actually assists the college's mission of taking Ohio State's scholarship out to folks who need it wherever they can be found. We are, if you were defining exactly what an organization like this would do without any of our history, you might change some of the funky funding stuff, but the fact is that you would build a deliverable pretty much exactly like we have. You would build a system that basically looks at the welfare of our citizens from before they're born through the end of their life. You would look at a system that is where they are. You would look at a system that opens the door to the kind of discoveries that we make all over campus. Think about the partnerships that are evidenced by the people in this room. We've worked with almost every college on this campus at one time or another in programs out in the state of Ohio to deliver ideas that we don't have within the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences. We've done that because being part of those communities, we understand the need that our citizens have, and we have an obligation. It's beyond an obligation, folks. This is not something we get up in the morning thinking we have to do. This is a calling. This is something we get up in the morning wanting to do. Being dissatisfied if we don't accomplish the goals of helping someone in our local community have a better life. And so as I think about leadership for outreach and engagement, and you might imagine there are as many different ideas on what that ought to be as there are people commenting on what it ought to be. But as we think about what we want for the next generation, I'm actually guided in large part by the efforts that you've helped us achieve over the past couple of years through our Vice President's conversation. We did that for us, but without knowing it, we did it for all of us. We did it for the entire campus. And so as we talk about that here a little bit this morning, I want you to keep in mind that dual outcome. I would use the phrase unintended consequence, but I'll share a secret with you. It's not. We knew that there would be a transition in leadership at the university level in outreach and engagement. And, our job is to be in the driver's seat. We're the ones who think about this all the time. We know we've got a great system. And so how do we help drive the conversation at the university level? So, as Ron mentioned, whatever you may think, good, bad, or otherwise, about this interim transition period, the fact that I'm able to be in that seat and be in this conversation, actually I think is a great benefit for all of you, because it takes your voices into that conversation in a very real way. And so I look for the outcome of this to be truly accomplishing what we would all aspire to do for the Ohio State University, to make us the universally envied engine of outreach education of an engaged university here in Ohio, across the country, and around the world. Now, just one more, you've heard me talk about a lot of different things. I think the first year I came here, I had my little Chris Clover 4-H name tag from back in the 80s. A lot of our 4-H educators don't even remember the ugly days of Chris Clover. Some of you do, though. You've heard me talk about using my crystal ball, which is really a magic 8-ball, and that the continued answer I get is ask again later, which is not all that helpful. So just continuing in that vein, I actually was kept a little late the second evening I was there, had some things I needed to accomplish, so I ran over and got some takeout Chinese food for dinner and brought it back to the office. And I'm quite the aficionado of the fortune cookie Fortune. I have quite a collection of them in a Ziploc bag in my drawer, and pull out one that fits the situation whenever I can. My two favorites, actually, to be completely honest with you, were, one, the empty bag. I was given a fortune cookie one time, and there was just an inflated bag with no fortune in it. I'm still trying to figure out what the message is there. My second favorite was Marilyn and I were eating dinner together, and we both had one, and she opened up hers, and it said something that could be construed as sort of, kind of personal interrelationship sort of fortune. And then she opened, I opened mine, and that's what it said, and then she opened hers, and the fortune, believe it or not, was ignore previous fortune. Well, we'll leave it at that. So I'm sitting there having my dinner last Thursday night, and got to fortune cookie time, and honest to goodness, it said, whatever path you take in life, be sure to do it well. And to me, that was a perfect message at the end of that first couple of days in this new role, because we had a pretty hard week the previous week. We lost 3 undergraduate students the previous week. The Friday after Thanksgiving, I went to a visitation in Marysville for one of our students on the Marion campus who'd been killed in a car accident. And as you've all been here to these kind of events, she had been out of high school for about 5 months. And so you can imagine what that funeral home was like with the young people that were there trying to come to terms with this. Just the Sunday before I started, we'd had the tragic incident in the Wexner Center for the Arts. And so, there was no honeymoon, folks. It was right into full force of understanding exactly what it takes to run an organization that is a $5.5 billion budget, 65,000 teenagers, and 40,000 employees. So, to have that reinforcing notion that, whatever road you go down, just do your best to do your best. And you've heard me say this before in a variety of different places. Doesn't matter whether I'm sitting in the dean's office or the provost's office. It doesn't matter the role that Ron and others are taking. Each of us just simply has to commit to waking up in the morning and committing to doing the best we can do in the job that is handed to us. And this will be, by aggregation, one tremendous organization. And so my hat is off to you, and I really look for, even in this transition period, I look for you to continue to live up to that. Well, the past 3 years, we've done an awful lot of talking. When I arrived, you were in the midst of finishing up a strategic plan. That process took a while longer, but we got the strategic plan. You've got some operational principles for OSU Extension. And before we were really finished with that, we moved into that centennial year and had a lot of celebrations. And, I think I opined many, many times that a birthday is a great thing to celebrate, but the really important question is, what does tomorrow look like? What does our second centennial look like in Extension? And so there were some national conversations that were framed around that. Karen Bruns did a terrific job of helping us be part of that national conversation. And in fact, her work with many of you led to you using some of those tools at the local level in your counties. On an Ohio system, we committed to the Vice President's conversation on the future of Extension. And that project, I'll be honest with you, it caught me by surprise as we initiated it. Because I figured we'd go through a lot of discussions about, sort of like the discussions we generally have. And the first thing we did was hit the pause button on spilling out what we need to do in the second century. The first thing the steering committee did on your behalf was stop and say, what exactly are the learning objectives for this activity? And so you think back on this, we spent a fair bit of time talking about the scholarship of futuring. Let's forget about us and our organization for a while, and let's think about the people we serve. So if we just jump right in as an organization with 100 years of history to figuring out what we ought to deliver, hindsight now makes it very clear that what we're likely to figure out is very much like what we've been doing for 100 years as an organization. So let's step away from that. Let's define what futuring is. Let's learn about it. In fact, let's learn about it not only for the purposes of this exercise, but also for the purposes of how we can use it over and over and over again in what we do as an organization. And so we learned about futuring. We learned about exploring what it is society might need 20 years out. And we set that time frame to be within the career span of our young folks in this group. We set it with the aspiration that there's been sufficient change within society that we'll pivot to some new needs and some new ways of addressing those needs. And so you've seen the documents. We talked about some of these last year. You saw scenarios developed for you on just a few of the topics that emerged from those futuring conversations. Hundreds of you participated in helping us populate and discuss these topics. It wasn't just folks within our organization, it was people outside the organization at a variety of different levels who committed their time and mental energy to thinking about what society might need in 100 years or in 20 years or in some of these cases, things are moving so quickly that it might be next year. And so based upon that futuring exercise, we then came back to the question of how do we begin to use that to really drive where we're headed into the future. As I said earlier, it turns out this is a good exercise not just for OSU Extension in the college, but for The Ohio State University and what we aspire to do in outreach and engagement. And one of the things that I hope to do is to really take this to a broader level and use some of the lessons learned across the university. I will tell you, as we went through the process of searching for a new director of extension that resulted in us bringing Roger Rennekamp back to campus, that every single applicant that we talked to reflected on that exercise that we were engaged in. As I and many of our OSU Extension leaders talked to colleagues across the nation, they asked about this exercise. They asked, we haven't, maybe Graham and Becky have done web analytics on the website, but we actually have had a lot of traction among thought leaders in thinking about what it is we were trying to accomplish here. So now it's time to really think about, how do we bring it home and what does this enable us to do as an organization? When the topic came up in those interviews, the one thing that I asserted, I did not imply, I was very clear, Roger, I hope you heard this message, but I was very clear that we did not do this exercise to constrain our thinking. We did this exercise to enable our thinking. And that is a very, very important distinction. We can't anticipate, we all know that change is real. We all know that we react very differently to the fact that change is real. Some of us want to duck and cover. Other people want to charge ahead and get out in front of it. And so what the conversation has done is actually given us some tools to begin to think about, how we take that realization that we're going to face change and make sense of it and refine our thinking and begin to gather both the resources and also the intellectual resources, if you will, to be able to make some progress. Now, we're not done. I hate to say we're not done. Graham and Becky, did I say we're not done? Oh, sorry. This is a process that if we've done it right, we'll never be done with. But we're ready to actually act, and you're going to hear in just a moment from a couple of our leaders that really helped us walk through all of this. But I want to set them up with a challenge to all of you, and the challenge is that you cannot rest on your laurels. You can't stop. This has to be one of the things that is just absolutely true about our operation, that is it has to change, it has to evolve, it has to race ahead, it has to be in fact one step ahead. You can't run to a new place all alone and then wonder why nobody else is around you, but you also can't push the herd ahead. You've got to find that right balance of just being a step ahead and then turning around and being close enough to encourage people to come with you. And I think that that's what we've set ourselves up to do. Now, I have the small print version of this, so forgive me, you're going to see this in a moment, but they're going to talk to you a little bit. There's a lot of stuff to cover, but one of the messages is the 3 Ds. You need to discover, okay? We're not done discovering yet. You have to think about the process itself. Futuring it's a useful tool, and you need to learn more about that. You need to dig deeper. And so that is taking advantage of professional development opportunities to build your own skill sets, whether it's in the process of futuring or whether it's in the application of what we learn from futuring. And you have to discuss, because the power of this room, audience participation here, take a look around real quick. I'm watching heads. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Look around. This is not, I'm taking notes on who's not looking around. I know the acting dean. Okay. The point here is this. We are who we are and what we are as an organization because of the collective. We have brilliant individuals, but we have absolutely extraordinary teams. And so, building from understanding the tools and what the tools tell us, filling the gaps in your own capacity by actually developing yourself professionally, and then continuing to engage in discussion. Because what we choose to pull from this exercise, what we've learned to do, will in itself constantly change. Requires that this organization think of itself as a team. And my last challenge for you is this, that you're not a team alone. There are a lot of people who are extraordinarily important in the success of our extension enterprise who are not in this room. You know, we do not have all of our disciplinary specialists here today. Never do at this event. We don't have our literally tens of thousands of volunteers who help us with these programs here today. We don't have our stakeholders here today. And so you've got to think of not only this team, but the broader team that sometimes you don't see, but is so absolutely critical in accomplishing everything that we need to do. With that, I'll leave you to actual business, enough pontificating. What a delight to be back with you. I just tweeted out that I'm back with my peeps this morning and feeling very comfortable about this. So I wish you, as Ron did, a terrific session the next couple of days here. I realize this is really important for you all to recharge the batteries and make those connections. But let's spend a few minutes, Graham, exploring what we actually think we can do with all of this effort. Thanks, folks.